Hello, welcome to Beyond Belief Sobriety. This is a podcast and community for people who are seeking or who have found a secular path to recovery from addictions of all kinds. And today we are streaming from the International Conference of Secular Alcoholics Anonymous. And we've got some people in the room, some of whom don't know what this podcast is, have never seen it before. They don't know who I am or what this is all about. So let's talk about that a little bit real quick. So Beyond Belief Sobriety is a podcast that I've been doing now for 7 years. We started in September 2015. There's over 286 episodes. It started as AA Beyond Belief. And I started it at the encouragement of Roger C., who at the time had a website called AA Agnostica. He thought he was going to retire, and he asked me to start a website, which I did. And that website was called AA Beyond Belief. And I decided to do a podcast along with it. So that's how this came about. After a while, after 5 years, 6 years, whatever, 5 years maybe, I was becoming interested in other secular options to recovery beyond just AA. And I needed to be free from the constraints that AA kind of puts on a podcast. So I changed the name of the podcast from AA Beyond Belief to Beyond Belief Sobriety, so I can cover a range of topics and not have to worry about being anonymous and that kind of thing. So that's it. So today we're going to do a Q&A session where Mary is going to ask me questions. I'm going to ask her questions. And you all can ask questions either through the live chat on Facebook or YouTube or here on Zoom. You can also call our toll-free number. I'm going to put that up here for you here real quick. Put the toll-free number up. Where is it? There it is. Yeah, our toll-free number, 844-899-8278, so you can call in. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Mary out and introduce her. Mary, how you doing?
I'm good. It's really great to be on the conference live. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, we've got I've got we've got different things going on here. There's Bobbert and Neil are in YouTube now. We've got 3 people watching in the live chat on YouTube. Usually we have like 20 people or so, but we've got quite a few people in the Zoom room as well. Many of them new to this whole podcast thing. So
can I take a minute to introduce myself to all the people that have never seen my face? Okay. So thank you, John, for your intro, and thank you for starting this podcast a long time ago. I used to listen to it during the COVID lockdown, every Friday night. You and Angela got me through that lockdown. It was awesome. It's a place for people that are looking for a more secular approach to the AA meeting or the AA recovery, your AA recovery. And so the way I came to this podcast was I've been in traditional AA for over 20 years before I found secular recovery. And I'm an adult child of AA members, if anybody can relate to that. And I just found that my home group became a little too rigid and a little too boxed in and a little too not what I thought AA was all about, not inclusive and diverse. It was more of this is how you have to do it. And if you don't do it this way, you're wrong, basically. And so I was looking for what I believed AA to be, which is about love and tolerance and acceptance and unity and recovery and diversity. And so I just found a secular meeting, and then I sort of started a women's secular meeting here in Savannah, Georgia. And through that, I found the greater global secular community. I went to my first conference in Toronto and in 2018. And then we have several secular meetings here in Savannah, Georgia now as a result of that. And that's about it.
Well, there you go. And you've been doing this live stream with me now for how long?
Since March. It feels like forever, but it's only been since March.
And it's been a lot of fun. So, we do the live stream, we do the regular podcast, and that's pretty much what we do. So let's get into what we're going to be talking about today. So
okay,
today is going to be a Q&A session, or a discussion. And since this is a conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought I would center it around topics related to Alcoholics Anonymous. And for those that are interested, I guess, in a secular approach to that. If I were at a different conference, Life Ring or Smart or whatever, I'd be talking about those things. But here we're going to be talking about AA. And it'd be interesting to see how people from a secular worldview interpret Alcoholics Anonymous, which, you know, everybody has their own ideas of it. So why don't I start, Mary?
Okay, I'm ready.
For those of you that are listening and in the audience, please type in your questions. You can call us on our toll-free number. You can comment in the YouTube chat. And question number one for you, Mary, is what is secular AA? What is it?
I just read a good definition of that this week on Facebook on a secular sobriety Facebook page. And it's really about, I call it a non-religious approach. However, there are people in secular AA that do religious rituals. It's about belonging. It's about belief. And I think it's the way AA was meant to be before my particular region got a little more religious with the AA approach. So it's your higher power can be whatever you choose it to be, and it is a more secular way to define it. Like you can be a believer, quote unquote. You can be an atheist. You can be, I don't know what my label is, but I know what I'm not, which is sort of where I'm at. I don't really have a label. I would say probably if you had to tie me down, it would be agnostic. So secular AA is a wonderful tribe of people that have all come together to interpret their program in a more secular way. And that's what this whole conference is about, in the variety of ways that people experience AA secularly. And there are many people that can't even relate to how anyone would do that. Like, how would you do the steps without God? How would you do your program without God? And I'm here to talk about that. That's
Cool.
why we're here.
Jay Monty says it's a movement within AA, which is interesting. Thinking about it as a movement. When I hear the word movement, I think it's a vehicle of change. It's a way of trying to affect change in an organization. It's a movement. It's a people behind it or whatever. And that's interesting. I guess I always saw it as what it is. I think of them as secularly formatted AA meetings. So these are just AA meetings that just happen to have a secular format. And by that, it means no prayers, pretty much. And usually those groups don't get too involved with AA literature. And they've been going on since 1975. So they're like special purpose groups.
Yeah, there are
They
no
are,
prayers. There's
yeah,
no prayers, and we're not allied with any sect, denomination, or organization.
yeah. So
Which
they're
is
just
what our preamble says.
special purpose groups of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's how I say it. Anybody out there have any other views about what it is? Please, put your comments in there. I'm trying to watch both places on Zoom and YouTube, so it's a bit of a challenge, but I'm happy to answer to hear your comments, and also to please call us in on the phone. So yeah, there you go. That's what we think anyway of what this is. I think of, when I think of secular AA, it's a lowercase s in the secular. It's describing what these AA meetings are, secularly formatted AA meetings, and this is a conference of people that go to those meetings. So that's really,
And
that's great.
it's just AA. It's just AA like any other AA. It just has the language is from a different perspective.
Kathleen in Zoom says to her, it's about being in recovery in a spiritual way without God. I like that,
There
Kathleen.
you go. Mm-hmm. And I
go ahead.
It's from something that I saw on Facebook. It says many secular people, despite their lack of religious beliefs, do engage in at least some religious rituals. For example, many of us can still enjoy a pleasant Christmas morning, or a Seder, or a hearty Passover, or the end of Ramadan, or spiritually infused yoga. Some of us might even go to church. Very few people do nothing that is remotely religious. It doesn't mean, but when you're secular, you tend to engage in a minimum amount of such religious activity. Secular people see themselves as primarily members of the human race, or of particular nations, or of given racial ethnic groups, or blah, blah, and not religious groups.
There you go.
Yep.
Gerard and on the YouTube live chat says for him, it's been a lot easier to do the steps without the God stuff. So that's interesting.
For
You
many
know,
people, it is. For many
yeah,
people.
when I first started out, I was very much into the steps and trying to understand them in a secular way, which I have and still do. And later, I kind of evolved to thinking that these are just how I live. Basically, these are experiences I've had. And so, if I ever am talking about recovery in general, I just kind of talk about my experience without really trying to mention a step or anything related to it. But then again, if somebody wants to talk in terms of steps, then I certainly I can do that. So the next question I guess I wanted to ask is just a topic of conversation is what is recovery to you? What does when you think about being in recovery, what does that mean to you, Mary? And to you who in the Zoom room and in YouTube as well?
Recovery to me is being open to being more aware in my life and to be less in zoning out and isolation. And being sober makes me feel like I have my, shit together, but doesn't necessarily mean I do. But it's a place of starting where I can be aware to be present in my life. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect. It means that I'm working on becoming more aware of what works and do more of that, and what doesn't work and do more of that. And I have things that I do to stay in the zone of recovery, and I know that if I'm not in that zone, I'm either then I'm more aware of that. But I think it's being aware of what my triggers are, and what is a hindrance to my serenity. Because serenity is my main goal of recovery, and having fun. Because I didn't get sober to not have fun. Yeah, it's not about being serious for me. It's about having fun and not having to escape.
Yeah, I've come to understand it as a process. Number one, it's something that happens over time, and it's a process where I change, and it starts from for me it started from going from uncontrolled drinking to abstinence was the biggest change. And then from there was some self-reflection and understanding myself and trying to just improve as a human being. And now I'm at this point where when I think about recovery as being a process of change where you try to become, the best possible person you can be, I guess. It's like, isn't that what living is? Isn't that what
Mhm.
life is? Isn't that what all human beings should be doing anyway? So it's gotten to the point where yes, I'm a person in recovery in the respect that I am cognizant of the fact that alcohol was a serious problem in my life and it will be again if I drink. And I do need to take some action to keep that awareness and to be involved in my personal growth. And always having in the back of my mind that I don't want to go back to drinking, basically, But by and large, I don't. I just think of myself as just a person living and wanting to grow as a human being and learn different things, learn and grow, basically. So yeah, I
But
think it started off as just wanting to get sober and
yeah,
not
it
have
did.
problems,
But
and
now
to
I
where I
found
am
that
now.
since I'm sober, I have to also be very vigilant about what other addictions like
That's true.
whack-a-mole pop up. So it's a
That's true.
behavioral awareness as well.
Some more comments in the live chat. Martin Thomas says that he agrees with Gerard that here in Ireland, there's sometimes pressure for one to believe in a God.
Mhm.
Okay, that's not good. Jeffrey Munn's book, Staying Sober Without God, has much help Gerard. He likes that book. And
It's a great book.
Martin Thomas says, since I left free from the big book dogma syndrome, the guy bit, I'm happily sober. Oh, let myself free from the big book dogma. Okay. That is something that I had to do over a period of time as well, Martin. It took me a while. I started off in a group where I basically read that book repeatedly, and it took me a long time to get to where I'm at now, where I do think it's a great historical document, but it's not really relevant to my particular life today. But I do appreciate that the people at that time wrote that about their experience, and over time, their experience has been passed down to us, and we can relate our own experience in our own way. So the book is interesting. It's good. I mean, it's okay, but it's not that critical for me to study it and like I had
I guess.
before.
I feel that way though, even in my own sobriety 27 years ago. I never
Yeah.
felt the big book was that big of an inspiration for me, even when I started.
Good for you, Mary.
Yeah, I've just never so I never really felt like I had to put it down because I never felt that attached to it personally
No,
anyway. I mean, I think
no,
it's a great historical document and I have deep respect that there are many people that love it and their lives are better for it. I
yeah,
respect that. It's just
yeah,
not my case.
right. In the chat, Kathleen says that recovery to me is to be able to live life in all its reality, joy, and sorrow, grief and loss, without having to drink, eat, shop, lose myself on Instagram scrolling, find validation in other people, all those addictive behaviors, and keep growing, learning, and being a good human. I think that's a great definition.
That
You
is a
know,
wonderful definition. Well said.
very well said. Looking for sobriety, abstinence, recovery, personal growth. Neil says that the best part of the Mun book for me is the stuff that is not about the steps. Yeah, there's a lot of people for sure in the rooms of secular AA that have absolutely no use for the steps, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, a lot of
Uh,
people don't. There are a lot of people just do 1, 2, and 3, and they're done.
yeah, but
Yeah,
there's people in traditional AA meetings that don't do steps either. So
a
it's
lot of
like
people that don't do steps, but they just
uh,
aren't vocal about it.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
that's one nice thing I think is that we can at least be honest, like, do we like to do those or not?
Yeah, I feel that
And
there's no pressure here in secular to say the company line.
yep,
We can all speak our truth
yep.
here. Mhm.
Mark here in Zoom has a question. Do you believe you could have got sober with Zoom or you needed the people in person? Well, I would say yes, I could have gotten sober on Zoom, but here's the thing. So when I got sober in 1988, there was no internet, there was no Zoom. I couldn't, if someone had put me in something like this at that time, I probably wouldn't be able to relate. But with this technology being in part of my life for so long, I think it would be second nature for me now to do
Mhm.
that.
Agreed. I
But
could
yes,
totally do that, and I know someone that has gotten sober in on Zoom
I think
alone.
so. Yeah, and I've met some of those as well. So yeah, I think for me, I could because so much of my life is lived on a screen now. But yes, and back in time, if you take me back in time, it would have been what this is crazy. I wouldn't, but yeah, no, but that's not what your question was. But
No,
yes,
but
I think
I think there are many people, especially
yeah.
since COVID, that have gotten sober online on Zoom.
Yep.
Yep.
Another comment here from Rich in YouTube says that I was lucky enough to be comfortable in my atheism when I came to AA, so I could reject the God stuff without getting angry about it. And see, I wasn't. Well, first of all, I didn't even know I was an atheist. I didn't really identify as anything. I didn't know anything about religion. Didn't have any religious experience, but I was very much a conformist,
Mhm.
and that's what I did. I conformed and tried to want to be part of the group. So I learned how to, you know, talk their talk, I guess. And in a while, after a long period of time, I mean, many years, I didn't know what I believed anymore.
Yes.
And until I realized that I was an atheist and re-examined all my beliefs and put everything on the table, that's really when I really feel like I started coming alive as a person in recovery because I was speaking in my own way and from my own experience,
Mhm.
and that was constantly changing and still is. So,
Yeah, agreed.
yeah,
A lot of
wasn't
people, I feel, just parrot to get group approval,
that's
and
what I did.
then it's really not their own belief system.
Yep,
And but if that's what you need to do to stay sober,
yeah.
do it. Do it.
And
But
I
as you
can see how
grow,
that's natural. It was natural
yeah,
for me to do that.
for group approval. But recovery's not about conformity. And
No.
I think a lot of groups that I used to be in, it was all about conformity.
Yep. Jay Monty says that he could not get sober with Zoom because I would never spend the money on a phone. Beer was cheaper. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. But, now, for example, I work remotely now and it's just, I'm more comfortable doing it that way now. Going into the office just seems weird. Actually, every meeting I go to, a recovery meeting is online now.
Mhm.
Um, my primary means, I guess, of communicating with people in recovery is I participate in these echo meetings through the Missouri state of Missouri, and they have these meetings where peer support specialists get together twice a month and talk about issues of related to recovery in the state. And go anyway. That's my primary means of getting, I guess, support or feeling like I'm connecting with the recovery community anymore. That and the podcast, but and it's all done on
I go to 2
online.
Yeah, 2
You go to 2?
face-to-face a week.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a women's meeting here and then an outdoor meeting on Sunday.
Yeah, that sounds nice, that outdoor meeting.
It's great. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's under the big
Gosh.
live oaks. It's a wonderful thing, and I'm COVID cautious, so I do a lot of meetings online too.
Yeah, smart. Well, we've got like I didn't know we were going to get so many people on Zoom. I was really expecting all of you to want to listen to the doctor from the
How many do we have? Because I can't see the Zoom.
There are 19 people in the Zoom room, and there are 12 in YouTube.
Great,
So
welcome.
I'm very grateful for you being here. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and feel free to ask us questions too, or what do you have?
Catherine here says that she often listens to the podcast, and it's nice to see you in person. Oh, wishes you could see Mary. If you could see Mary if you went over to YouTube. We couldn't figure out how to get the two.
Yeah,
her camera worked at both places.
Yeah, we couldn't get the camera
Koob,
going.
Dr. Koob. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. I think I've gotten all the comments covered. I don't see anybody calling in on the phone yet. So next thing on the list here to talk about, we went through what recovery means to you, and I don't know how the people here listening feel about the steps, but that's what we're going to be kind of talking about. So, if you don't like the steps, feel free to talk about that in a way that's where you're expressing your experience, but not necessarily bashing somebody for whom the steps are something they appreciate.
Right.
And I can go both ways. I mean, I can bash them or love them or whatever. Whatever. So anyway, we're going to talk about those a little bit now. So let's talk about this, Mary.
Okay, gotcha.
Do you have any difficulty at all? And anybody can answer this question. Do you have any difficulty at all? And it is even important, but to understand the steps, the 12 steps, from purely a secular, practical viewpoint?
No.
You don't have a problem with it?
Not now, but I did. I did when I was in traditional AA and I was going to be speaking to a traditional group. I didn't know how, after I had already embraced secular recovery, I didn't actually know how I was going to talk about the steps in a secular way until I just did. And I did my research and I read a lot of books. And then it took me a while to change my language into a secular approach. And all we're doing, I feel, it's the same program. It's just different languaging. It's just different languaging. It's the same program. It's the principles of each step. It's the language is different. So I don't have any problem taking anyone through the secular 12 steps or through the traditional 12 steps. I meet people where they are. So I generally ask them how they would, if they ask, would I take them through the steps? And I ask them, what perspective would you like to do the steps from it? Do you have a favorite book, or do you have favorite interpreted 12 steps, or do you want to do the traditional? I can meet people where they are because there's so much literature now for that. There's no reason not to.
Yeah, I'm much like you, Mary. The very first thing that I did after coming to realize that I was an atheist is try to figure out how I was going to be able to deal with AA as an atheist. And I remember even early on in my early years in AA, there was a little part in the big book that I took notice of, and it was a description of the steps as a what did it say? A practical approach to life or something like that, a practical program of action, something along those lines. And I always understood some practicality behind all the religious language. I could see the experience that I was having and the things that I was doing had some practical benefits, that I was actually doing something. But I wasn't comfortable describing that in meetings for a long time as in just a purely practical way until after after a long time, about 25 years, and I started doing that, and I wasn't really welcomed that talk wasn't welcomed at the particular group I went to. So I helped start a secular AA meeting here where I live, and then I was free to speak however I wanted to. But I'm
I
like you,
felt,
I see it
yeah,
as language. I really
yeah.
do, just
It's just
words. I
language
don't
is
have to take it so literally as
no,
written.
right.
Um, and I also understand it from an historical perspective, I guess, that those are the words of those people at that time based upon the experience that they had.
Hmm.
And but underneath that, there's a whole set of experiences that you could describe in a different way. They just happen to describe it based upon a religious experience.
A religious experience, yes.
Yeah. And
Mhm,
that's how
and
they
a
describe it. But
Christian point of view.
yeah.
However, there was an atheist there when they were forming the steps, and that's why we now have a higher power as you understand it in our steps. And I never even heard about that until I was at least 20 years sober. I guess I wasn't much of an AA historian, and I don't know why I never heard of Bill Burwell or Hank Parkhurst prior to 20 years ago. I mean,
Yes.
or the last 7 years. Someone came to our meeting in Savannah and was talking about Bill Burwell. They were from out of town, and that's the first I ever heard of Bill Burwell. So then I dived into all the AA history, and I realized, wow, yeah, I just I prefer the I prefer that my AA be separate from a religious sort of a church. I don't substitute AA for a church in my life now, and I think it kind of gets murky
Mm,
when it gets sort of churchy for me. If it had been as religious as meetings I've gone to in the beginning, I would have never come back after my first meeting.
yeah.
But I already knew about AA from growing up with parents in AA that were not that way, that I knew that AA was about love and tolerance, so I stuck around. And so I just feel very comfortable in secular AA. And I would like to normalize it for the world. And I would love there to be more secular meetings and secular conferences and secular interpretations of recovery for people that um, think that way and appreciate that language.
I think that it's been interesting over the last couple of years with online meetings growing, the number of online meetings growing, that there's more availability of secular meetings, whether they be secularized AA meetings or Lifering or Smart Recovery. Those are just much more available than they've ever been before. And it's been interesting that the secularly formatted AA meetings, the number of those have increased, I guess, when you take a look at the online meetings. And I know that LifeRing and Smart have experienced the same growth online anyway, of
Mhm.
more interest in those. So there seems to be at least a good amount of people that are interested in that. Now I'm sure that the non-secular group online options have grown as well, and maybe even
Probably,
more so than the
right?
secular options. But it's nice to see that there's a really good um, group of there's a need for that. Now Larry has his hand up. Okay, I'm not used to hands being up. But Larry, you got something to say? Say it. Go ahead, Larry. Yes.
Is it Larry K?
This is Larry K.
Hey. Yes.
Well, thank you, Larry, for saying that. I
Thanks,
do.
Larry.
I appreciate it. And again, anybody that wants to open up their mic here in the Zoom room, please feel free to do that. So many different ways you can talk to us. People in YouTube, you can use the live chat, Facebook live chat. You can call us on our toll free number, 844-899-8278, or you can talk to us in Zoom. This is crazy. And so I'm watching all these different things going on here.
So I'm
So
wondering how many people are going to be at the conference this weekend from a more traditional approach that have never heard of secular AA. I wonder how many people are here for their first time to see what secular AA is all about.
is there anybody here in the Zoom room or on YouTube or Facebook who has never been to a secularly formatted AA meeting and is here out of curiosity? Oh, Mikey. Hey, Mikey.
Hey, Mikey. So I come from I'm in the deep South, and so my perspective on talking about the secular recovery movement is speaking to a pool of people who are, and it is comparative for me, Larry, because the people that would be most interested in what I know secular AA has to offer, and the people that are coming to all the meetings in Savannah that are secular, are coming from the traditional perspective and the big book people. And so I'm doing everything I can. It is comparative, but it's also trying to explain what it is. Because a lot of the traditionalists here in the AA program are telling people that we're not real AA. Don't go to there. They're not real AA. And so I'm always talking in a comparative way, and I get that now. And I appreciate you pointing that out. So I will watch how I language that. But that's that's where my perspective is at this point.
Okay. This is exciting, actually.
Hey, Jason from
Okay.
Atlanta. Jason Hardman from Atlanta. Hello.
Jason. Hi, Jason. Hi, Lola. So just for you know, the people in the Zoom room who talk are not going to be heard by the people in on the YouTube channel. Jay Monty says, I already had one of those interactions. They think secular AA is all over the place. Not having uniformity does lend itself to that. So, okay, so we're moving on now to the questions here. So we found out how she feels about this, her secular. So tell me this. I think you probably already covered this. This probably won't take very long, but do you think that going through the steps is even necessary for everyone
No,
in AA?
no, because I've heard a lot of people say they've never done the steps, and they stay sober and they've never done it.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I know people that just have an aversion to doing the steps. I know people that have done sort of a fourth and fifth step with a therapist. Some people are just don't want to do steps. They're just averse to it. And I mean, there's no requirement. The only
Yeah.
requirement is a desire to stop drinking.
Yep. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And in fact, if somebody was new and just getting involved in AA and was asking me what they should do, I'm like you, I'd like really try to meet them where they are and find out what they want to do, what their goals are. If they're interested in the 12 steps, we could find books that are applicable to them for that. If they aren't interested in 12 steps, that's totally fine. I really, again, it's language. I see it as a description of a process that is almost a human experience that we go through when you go through a major change in your life. So whether you put them in a format of steps or not, I think is kind of immaterial. But I'd also encourage people to check out, all sorts of support that's out there. That because there's a lot of
A lot more than there ever was.
yeah, whether that be just groups that sprung up from social media that aren't attached to any special organization, or it be groups like Life Ring or Smart or Women for Sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
These are all groups that you can go to in conjunction with your AA. It's like you don't have to just be in one silo. You can do whatever you want. And I would encourage anyone who is like newly sober or curious about getting into the recovery community to check out other options because they are certainly out there. Okay, so I think we got that question done. Does anybody else have anything to
Well,
say
Neil
about
has
that?
something to say. He says,
Neil,
I've done the steps.
even been to 2 Joe and Charlie weekends, but they
Wow.
didn't help me get or stay sober. The fellowship is what did it to me. I think Mary and I were having a conversation. I was with somebody, and maybe it was the last live stream that we did, Mary, when I was remembering my first meeting, and I was remembering the the feeling that I had from the people who were sharing their experience with me and how much it inspired me and how I felt welcomed and at home. And it was just a kind of a very warm experience. And that I always remembered that. And I think that that has always been the special thing about AA to me, has been the personal connection I've had with other people. And I would agree with Neil that if I were to attribute, if there was any one thing that helped me in the early days get and stay sober, it's the other people.
Mhm.
It's the people.
I agree.
Totally.
I think the fellowship is the main thing that helps people
Yeah,
to get
it's
out of
totally that.
isolation and to connect with other human beings. That's what I think keeps people sober. That keeps me sober, you
It
know.
was completely.
But
Yeah.
the steps have helped me tremendously in my life, and I like doing the steps. And it's a process that I appreciate, so I'm okay with it. And I know probably more people don't do it than do. I think in
Yeah.
this day and age.
Let's
And
dig into those steps, Mary.
okay,
Talk
let's
about
go.
them. Talk about the first 3. How do you see those as a secular person? I mean, they seem to be pretty, religious.
Well, no, not in this. I don't do the traditional steps anymore, just secular. It's all the only
Okay, you
way
can
I
do them
do.
that
I
way?
don't go to traditional meetings anymore.
Alright.
Yeah, I just do secular.
And how you
So,
doing?
okay. So, I mean, I just like, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives become unmanageable.
Mikey, we'll get to you. Go
Came
ahead,
to
I'm sorry.
believe and accept that there was, that we needed help and that we made a decision to ask for help. It's kind of like what I was trying wasn't working. So I'm going to be open to suggestions now.
Yeah.
That's
Very
it.
nice, simple way of
I'm
looking
an
at it.
alcoholic. I can't just have one drink ever. I just can't. And I wouldn't want to, because once I have one, I'm going to want the rest of it. That's what I know now. For me, it doesn't work.
Mikey in Zoom has his hand up. Mikey, please. Awesome.
Wow. Great. Wow.
Awesome.
Nice. Mhm. Yep. Mhm. I feel the same. What meeting is it? Gotcha. 3 o'clock Pacific time. The San Luis Obispo meeting is your meeting, online meeting. Awesome. Great. Okay. And we're getting comments that no one that is
Yeah.
on YouTube can hear the people on Zoom. Is
That's
that
right.
right?
That's true. That's true. They're not the two like the two different rooms. So people in the YouTube land, there's like 13 people on YouTube. They can't not hear what people are saying in the Zoom room. So
Oh,
anyway,
okay. So
but
we'll
Mikey, thank you so much. I appreciate what you had to say,
Yep.
and thank you for listening for all these years. That's a real honor
That was
that
a
you would do
wonderful
that.
compliment. A wonderful
Yes, it really
compliment for
is.
that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm
That
gonna let my wife know that you said that. By the way,
and he even knows how many podcast episodes there are.
I know. I know.
So look, John,
I
look
love
what
it.
you're doing.
I love
Yeah.
doing this podcast, but I
Thank you
really
for
do like
that.
it.
Thank you for
So
that,
anyway, I
Mike.
put my phone number out there. Not my phone number, but the podcast phone number that you can call us, 844-899-8278. And everyone can hear us when you call on the phone number. So there you go. Okay, so Mary, I see it as you do. Again, I see this as a big experience. So number one, I got a problem. I admit it. I acknowledge it. I got a bad problem. I believe that there's some hope out there for me. There's some help. And I'm going to make a decision to make some changes in my life and do that. And
Yeah, I'm
that's
gonna be
steps
open
one,
to
2, and 3.
suggestion. I'm open to suggestion.
Open to suggestions.
Yeah.
And
And
I might feel differently about them next year or whatever, but that's kind of
right.
essentially how I see those
Yeah.
things.
I basically have to come to a place for me of like desperation that everything I tried, all the moderation didn't work. And I had lied to myself so much that I didn't trust myself anymore. And I was just done. It was like, tell me, I just need help and I'll give this a chance. But I didn't tell anybody I was going to AA because I didn't think I could do it.
Yes.
So I was real quiet about it until, probably a year. So, it,
And by the way, about the terminology, about something interesting about these steps. So when I was first approaching like these steps, the first question was, "What's your higher power?" And so I would tell people, "Well, my higher power is the group, or my higher power is other people. That's who's helped me." And over a long period of time, I just evolved away from that language altogether. It just occurred to me that I don't talk that way. I don't have higher powers.
no.
I don't speak that way. That's someone
Right.
else's way of talking. So if someone
Yes.
were to ask me if I have a higher power, I was like, "What the hell are you talking about? I don't have higher powers. I ask for help and people help me. That's it. I don't need a higher power. I can help myself, and of course, I can have other people help me, but I don't need a higher power." So, and that kind of drives me crazy. But I understand that. I understand there's also a nice, an approach to say that yes, I need something outside of myself. I'm not the whole answer to the world. I need to have higher power. And then there's like even among atheists, hardcore atheists, have a really deep need for spirituality and some sort of connection that can't not even be explained. So I appreciate that. I'm just kind of talking for myself. For me personally, no higher power necessary.
No.
I just stay away from that language. Okay, there.
No, absolutely no higher power necessary to do the steps or to be an AA. Absolutely not.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, Mary's over talking you, drowns you out. Yeah, it's kind of weird, Liza. The setup that we have isn't what we normally do, but having the combination of Zoom and YouTube, I think it messes with the sound a little bit. So
So
anyway,
are they some people not
well,
able to
Mary
hear
just
us?
said that I drown Mary over talking you drowns you out and cannot hear either one.
Oh,
So
okay. Well,
so we should
I'll
talk.
work on that.
We should just talk one at a time, probably
Okay.
most likely. But yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
it's it's a little bit of a little different setup that we have than normal. Anyway, enough of that. Anybody, any comments on that I see out there? Anybody? Oh, we got someone, Judy from North Carolina. What do you have to say? Ah,
Hey, Judy.
well, I like that. And for those in YouTube land, Judy from North Carolina, higher power is HP is healing power. Healing
Healing,
power. I like
healing,
it.
healing process.
Healing process. Healing process. Healing process. I do like that. It's a process and it's healing, and I like that. Neil says, please tell everybody on Zoom towards the end of the meeting that we are here every Saturday. That we are. I will let you all know that every single Saturday we live stream on YouTube and Facebook. So if you'd like to, participate in that, please do. I'd love to see y'all there. We usually have about 20 people or so in the room, and it's a lot of fun. And we learn something, I think. So I would encourage you to do that. Thank you, Neil, for reminding me to remind people of that. So there we go. That covers the first 3 steps. Now we see how fast we can get through these. This is kind of like the back to basics, people. You can do those steps like, okay. Now, Mary, can you just, okay, I already talked about that. Okay, tell me this. Was the inventory and sharing of it that you do in steps 4 and 5, was that helpful to you?
Yes. Step 4 was helpful because I wrote it all out longhand, and it gave me a way to just kind of look at the map of my life and to see what stood out in my consciousness of things that had happened that might have been traumatic to me, that kind of went along with the history of how I started drinking. So that was good to just see my own personal history. I don't think I'd ever done that before, for sure. And then the 5th step was really hard for me because I don't trust people. And so I put it off for a very long time because I definitely didn't want to tell anybody within my local circles because I just figured if I told my inventory that nobody would ever be friends with me again, or, I'd be the worst of the worst, or whatever it is when you want to do a confession. And so I waited until I was at, I always picked a really sweet old lady sponsor that would be really sweet, like an apple pie kind of grandmother person. And then after I've done it since then, I've always had, whenever I've done my 5th step, it's always been like, okay, that's it. It's been a very, I feel it helps me sort out what happened, look at what happened, and then talk about what happened helps me in my healing process personally. Not for everybody, but it worked for me. And I just don't recommend waiting so long. After I did my 4th step, I waited a long time to do the 5th. So it was like I always had this nagging thought, I've done it, but I need to do the 5th. And it was really about me learning how to trust in another human being. For me, it was about trust as much as it was about compassion.
I would say helpful to me as well. I think it's almost natural, by the way, that if you go through an experience where you've already recognized that you have a drinking problem, and you recognize all the problems that alcohol has caused in your life, it's just natural to see that. I think it's natural to ask yourself why, to get more introspective. I mean, that was the first question I had of myself when I first got sober was, why didn't I know I was an alcoholic? Here comes Liza calling in on the phone. I'm always excited when we have a caller on the phone. Liza from Chico, California. We're taking the call now.
Hey.
Liza, how you doing?
Hi there. Good. I've got 2 devices on, so I'm hoping there's no feedback.
Oh, and I can watch you on the phone. That is so cool.
Right. So, I just wanted to make a remark on steps 4 and 5. And it blends into, do I think the steps are important in general? I think certainly sobriety can be achieved and maintained without them. But I also think that in many people's lives, mine included, that doing the steps helped and continues to help me with what I grew so poor at in my later drinking years, and that was self-discipline. Any sort of self-discipline, any sort of ability to coordinate any organization in my life. Things just went chaotic. I mean, I used to, I'm a civil engineer by training. Life used to be a clean file cabinet, and anymore it looks like 52 card pickup.
Yes, agreed.
Hello?
100% agreed that it was like a mess. And it sounds like someone else is talking while we're talking. Liza?
I thought it was an.
Oh yeah, someone else is like on a party line. I don't know.
Okay, we just have to put someone in the Zoom line on mute.
Okay, so we're gonna have to mute. Sorry, Liza.
And that's not Liza. It's some.
Oh.
This is the fun of Zoom. There's a way to mute people.
It's up to you, because now we're hearing.
No?
Yeah, you're still on, but we're also hearing someone's phone call. But I think John just took care of it. No, we're not. Yeah. All right. So I'll, John Sheldon, I'll
Okay.
get Mikey to see if he'll come in and help.
Uh,
Or can you
okay.
just take, I'll get a hold of Mikey. Hang on. Let's
Okay, I
see.
see it. I
Help.
can mute. I can mute a second.
Okay.
Muted.
It's Lynn's. There we go.
All right, got that.
Okay.
I think I got her muted.
You
Okay.
muted, but you
Oh
muted
my
everyone.
gosh. Okay.
Go ahead, Liza.
Okay. Now how many people are here?
I got you on. You're on now, Liza, and only you are talking.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Well, that was a wild adventure.
Yep.
Anyway, the reason that doing steps, period, any steps, helped me so much was that when I came into this program, any sort of self-discipline or organization in my life was just completely lacking. I had no way of pulling any sort of an exercise program together, if you will. And by having these steps outlined to me, it resonated with me because it was an exercise program. Okay, now I've done step 1, I can move on to step 2. And while I may not need that today, I needed it then. And again, I certainly think it can be done without them, but I think to some people that just having that regimen is important. Step 4 was really important to me and still is, because the obvious, having to face things that I knew intellectually, but there's no way in the world I was going to fess up to. I wasn't going to bring these subjects up, not even in my own mind.
Oh,
I didn't
agreed.
want to think about them, but by forcing them out and bringing them to my own attention, brought a great deal of enlightenment and self-improvement. And as far as higher power goes, I felt I was forced to find a higher power. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I believe in numbers. I believe that everything is going to eventually boil down to numbers. Everything does. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll get a higher power. And that is 3.14 pi.
I love that.
That's my higher power. Thanks. I'll go
Thank
now.
you, Liza.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Liza.
much for calling. Bill in Zoom has his hand up. So, Bill, please.
Mhm.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to hear
Thank
from you.
you.
We have a caller from Richmond, Virginia, and I'm
So-
thinking it might be Fred. We'll take this call. We only have a few minutes, but we might go into overtime if anybody wants to hang around. Fred, is this Fred from Richmond? Who is this?
Hello, John. Hi, Mary.
I knew it was Fred.
This is Fred.
Lay it on us, Fred.
I have an interesting thought for you. You know, I've been in the program for what seems like almost 3 decades and going on 4. And, you know, when I got sober, like you, John, I was young. So living all this time, doing the steps and redoing the steps and working with others, I bet you never thought like this, John. What if, you know, we getting old? So all the things that we thought about when we were young, what sobriety was, we found out it's a lot different.
That's true.
So, you know, people can work these steps and relentlessly or not. And whatever they do, you know, you just got to stay alive and stay sober. And that's the thing to longevity. So, you know, I'm not worried about if I did something wrong. If I paid somebody back, that was a good thing. If I made the amends and did the things, that's all that needed to be done. And whether I offend somebody today or not, whether I offend somebody today or not, that's their problem, because I think I'm living in a way that is good, you know, and it doesn't have anything to do with if I believe in God or I don't believe in God. It's just a way to live. So, you know, we all have our chances, and when you get a second chance, do the best you can, because you might not get a third. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. And, you know, the here and now is the most important thing. So,
Fred?
You know, when I hear all this good stuff, it just makes me excited because I'm happy about it.
Thank you.
Thanks
Fred.
a lot.
Thank you for calling. I really appreciate it. I so relate to what you had to say there. What I did and believed and when I was younger is completely different than I am now. I was having a conversation with Mary just beforehand, and just to let you all know, I am aware that I am a dinosaur, and I do try to kind of tone down my things to understand that, I'm pretty old and I have some weird ideas sometimes, but anyway, that's just the way it is. You know, it's what happens when you live a long time. You get older and that's the way it is.
Especially, John, if something breaks, right?
Yes.
If it breaks, then okay.
I don't know why I said that.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Fred.
Yep.
So nice of you to call. Okay.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Okay, so this has been fun. We're coming up on an hour now, so this is usually when we will conclude the live stream. I'll leave it open for a little bit for anyone who wants to hang out and chat, and if anybody has any questions. So again, I really appreciate y'all coming out here and listening to us. I hope that this was informative and something that you enjoyed. That we brought some value to you and added a little something to your recovery capital, as I like to say. I enjoy doing this. I always love being with Mary every weekend. It's just it inspires me and motivates me, and without you all listening, it just wouldn't be as much fun. So thank you very much for being here. And what I'm going to do now is, like I said, I am a dinosaur, and my favorite time of life was in the 1970s. Because the music was so damn good and we were all cool.
Very cool. Very cool. The music was so good.
All right, everybody out there on YouTube, I'm going to sign off, and I'll hang out and Zoom for a while. Bye-bye, y'all.